right, so we're over here at the work table, and we've got one of our heads. We're going to show you how to assemble all of the valves, the guides, the springs. These heads that we got are really cool. They had the machine work done on them many years ago before we acquired them. And they never were on a car. But they are all ported and polished. The flow, and somebody did an excellent job on it.
So if you ever see inside of a valve guide where it looks almost like it's threaded, that could be an old knurling job.
Yeah, and there's been work done on the head
at some point, and instead of replacing the guides.
So we're going to start assembling this, and what we're using all parts, once again, from Caddy Daddy. And there's a few tricks, and there's some important things also to know, and we're going to show also how to check the fit of the valves. Because if the valves aren't fitting properly...
No, you can run into problems, such as this exhaust valve out of a locomotive that is very badly burned, to the point of looking like charred wood, with a pretty good notch out of the side of it.
It was interesting. One of our associates said lava.
And that's pretty much what
happened. First thing we're going to do is we want to take a little shim that Josh has here, and we want to check the clearance here in the valve seats.
The service manual tells you it's a 5/1000 inch thick piece of brass shim stock, cut to a 1/16 of an inch wide, and you want it to go down into the valve guide about 1/4 inch. So they tell you to hang that over the guide on the push rod side. Just going to keep it in place, and you should not be able to insert the valve into the guide with the shim in place. The valve goes in, then you have excessive clearance. You're going to need to replace the guides, or, as happened here in the past, have them knurled. As you notice, you can pretty easily drop the valve in. When we flip it over, I'll show you how when you start to get experience with this, you can tell by feel if it's right. So it's hard to explain. It just comes from years of doing. Now we'll check this intake valve. Piece of shim stock. Same thing. Doesn't want to go in.
Doesn't want to go in there. Once the shim's removed, it drops right in. Smooth.
Right in. So now we can turn the head over and show you how the
check the seating.
Valve seating. We're going to apply a small amount of Prussian blue. I should add that with the shim stock, you can find that in a hobby shop.
Yeah. I've seen it in hardware stores.
Hardware stores. Sometimes an arts and crafts store will have it. It's just a matter of getting it the right thickness. So I put a little Prussian blue on my finger, and we're going to run it around the seating surface of the valve.
And this die is commonly available at the auto parts store.
Yeah, your auto parts store, if they don't have it in stock, they can order it from their warehouse. Insert the valve. And we go straight in. Give it a 1/4 turn one way, 1/4 turn back. And now push it out my way, Bob. Now what we're going to look at is the line here in the head and on the seat. You want to make sure that's about between a 1/16 and about 3/30 seconds, I believe is what the service manual said. Yes. If it's too much, you're going to have long-term wear problems. If it's too little, then once again, a burn valve. And we all know what that looks like.
And then you're taking your heads apart again. Not only do we like classic cars, we also like old classic tools. So this is what we're going to be using to install our valves and springs today. What we're going to do is we're going to get on either side here. We're going to work together. And what you want to do is you want to have a good something for lubrication. Some people use assembly lube. I just like a good simple, like a two-stroke.
I often like to use a two-stroke oil around piston rings and stuff that's going to kind of get hot initially, maybe. But a good quality oil that's you're not going to have a tendency to to coke up on you or anything like that.
So I'm going to start with the first valve. You just slide it in through there. And you kind of have that feel. The other side, we have our valve springs. And here's something, if you're doing a Cadillac motor, and these are available, once again, from Caddy Daddy. If you look at these springs, there is a difference between the top and the bottom. And by saying the bottom, they're a little closer wound together. And that one has to go towards the cast iron part of the head, not the retained part. So once again, if you're doing the 390 vintage Cadillac motor.
And if you put them side by side, you can very well see this would be installed, if this was the head here, this would be correctly installed, this would be incorrect. You can see the tighter wound coils at one end versus the other. So that would need to be turned. When you slide the spring on, you want to make sure that it's seated correctly and it's the little seat in the head, that it's not askew like that.
All right, you ready?
Yep, go ahead, Bob.
I get this right up against the face of the valve, snap her down. And what you'll see is there's going to be two reliefs on the end of the valve. We're going to take the retainers and the O-ring, slide those first and foremost onto the lower.
Now the O-ring, the valve seal goes into the lower groove. The upper single groove is for the valve keeper. Not like some engines where there's two grooves for the keeper. One is the seal. The one closest to the valve head is the seal, and the one towards the tip of the stem is the actual keeper. So what we will do is simply...
And with this tool, it compresses the spring, allowing
plenty of clearance. And we will slide the O-ring on very carefully. You don't want to force it and tear it. Make sure it's fully seated. And something that we did previously before that we didn't show you is we did add a little oil into this area, and it doesn't hurt to thank you, Bob.
Put a little in there.
Add a little more oil around the O-ring so it slips into the keeper easily.
Once again, little tricks to make your life easier.
Yeah, and not to damage your new parts. The other little trick is on the keepers is to apply a little grease or assembly lube onto them. We've done these already while we were getting set up. You can see it there. And what that'll do,
acts as a little glue.
Yeah,
helps to hold it in there because they're kind of small parts.
Especially when you're doing this by yourself.
No!
And that's a good example of when you drop something. Just, if you have another, go grab it, finish what you're doing, and then you'll want to clean that part that dropped. Because you don't want to pick up any dirt or filth and bring it into your engine. So when I pick that up, it'll get cleaned off with some solvent and be nice and clean so we don't get any grit in our engine. And there we go again. Okay, Bob, release that before we lose another one.
Slowly release it.
Just like that. It's rebated, but it's sitting flush. There's nothing sticking out.
Everything is true.
And the spring is straight.
Put a little of the oil on there.
Give it a little extra on the retainer.
So what we've done is turn the head around so you can see the whole process from the other side. So this is the internal part of the head. Let's go ahead and get these guys.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and install the rest of the valves on here. And once again, the parts that you see here are available at Caddy Daddy. We got it all flipped over.
That's right.
And we're going to go ahead and put the heads on there and get everything set up. Just a few bolts in there because we'll kind of go over the changes in bolts with accessories.
Yeah, we need to get the right bolts in the right place, and we'll torque everything down later. We get the head set in place here, then we can start focusing on how the rocker arm assemblies get put together, which is kind of intricate on these engines. Probably the most complex part.
Yeah.
And probably what sets it apart the most from other engines of the day. There's a little complexity.
These gaskets here, you're going to notice these come from the Caddy Daddy kit. And there is a little difference. If you look, there's a metallic on the backside, but what's great about it is it's labeled top. So you want to...
very helpful for guys like Bob and I.
Yeah.
Anything that helps us not make a mistake is a good thing.
Here we go. We got them on there. So we're going to get these heads on. Let's go ahead and do your side first.
Okay.
They are not light, guys.
Yeah.
So the next part of the heads are the rocker shafts with the rocker arms. Now, they look pretty simple, but there are a lot of details to it that are very specific. And so we've got a fully assembled one here, and this includes new rockers and a new shaft that came off the shelf here. And you can see that we have the original ones right here. We did have to reuse the springs and
the washers at the ends.
And the washers at the end.
And the spring washer in the ends.
On there. But we have the shafts, but we're going to look and we're going to describe that there's a very specific orientation that you have to do. So Josh, right here, let's look at the shafts.
Okay, well this is one of the used shafts. And something I'd like to point out, these are the notches that they speak of in the service manual. Right there and right there. They're very fine, very, very hard to see.
And they line up with the oil holes.
But they line up with the oil holes. Now, the reproduction shafts don't necessarily have the notches in the ends. As we can see, the oil holes, but it's smooth. So when the manual's talking about the oil holes, or the notches, they line up with the oil holes. And you'll also see that there are oil grooves. When the rocker shaft is installed on the head, the grooves go down
towards the motor.
The head, and the oil holes go towards the inside of the engine, or towards the push rods. So that's one of the several details to pay attention to here.
Because it'd be very easy to slide these guys on backwards, but they need to be in that specific orientation.
Or they run dry. These mounts, if you're not paying attention, they look like they could go any which way, but
and they look symmetrical, but they're just not quite.
That's right. There are two different things to notice. Is if you're looking from the side, this distance here is greater than here. So the way these mount is the longer side. This side, it mounts towards the head, and this goes up. In other words, the head of the bolt will be on this surface. This surface here will mate with the cylinder head.
With the cylinder head.
So that's, and then also you'll see the little point here. And the drawings in the service manuals are not very clear about how this all goes. That's why we're taking the extra time to point out the details. So we know that the long side goes down, the larger bearing surface goes down. So if we look at this setup here, you will see that the middle two, the indentations point towards the center of the shaft, and on the outer ones, they point to the outside, which you can see on.
Yeah, you can see right here the difference. and they're mirror images. And then it flips on the outer one.
That's correct. And so this one here is partially assembled, and so we'll go ahead and put it the rest of the way together with the rocker arm, the spring, the other rocker arm. Now you want to slide that?
Yeah. That guy, I'm looking at it. Boom, making sure it's in the
right orientation. At least as you build these up, you can drop the bolts in, and you're not fighting them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you can take your time to think about what you're doing and look everything over.
Then you have your washers.
Then you have a flat washer, a wave washer,
and then your other flat washer.
And then we have the cotter pin.
Cotter pin, which retains it. We're going to drop it down in there. There we go.
So we'll bend those over once we get them set down on the head.
But if you're to do it quick, it's very easy to get these mixed up. So once you get them together and look at it, and once again, they are mirror images of each other. The larger side goes towards the inside of the inner tube, but then is reversed on the outside.
And when you set this down on the cylinder head, you'll be able to see that the rocker arms line up with the top of the valve stems. If they don't line up with the top of the valve stems, they're a little bit off center, then you've put something together wrong. And take your time to look and see what's going on and get it together right.
Good, and that's a good tip right there. So you want to have proper lubrication and put those in there right.
And the other thing to note is that the oil that comes up to go into this tube just works in around one of the bolts. Mm-hmm. On where it passes through the head. There's an oil passage from the block through the head. So when you're up into the one standoff here, so when you are priming your engine, it can take quite a while for oil to work its way up here to the top. Mm-hmm. So now we can go ahead and we'll bring the engine back over and mount these up.
Put them in, get them all lined up, and in putting them in, it'll also double check that we installed everything right.
That's correct.
All right, let's grab the engine. Let's test fit these and just drop them in there, see how they line up against our springs to check ourselves, and just do like a couple of turns so we can get ready to put the push rods in.
We won't knock anything loose.
Yeah, I'll just get a little grab. Yep. How's yours look over there? They line up with the top of the springs?
Yep, looks good.
Let's go ahead and drop in.
Start putting our lifters in.
And we have them soaking in oil, and then we also have a cam lube on the end of it. So we can go ahead and drop them in.
Looks good.
Looks good.
Vine Village is a great organization that gives back to the community. Check it out. You'll see so as well. Thanks for watching.
Hi, my name is Sanan Kirsten. We're here at the 2018 Vine Village Celebration, our major fundraiser here that helps fund programs that we run for people with developmental disabilities here in the greater Napa community. Vine Village was founded by my family and another family, each who had children with disabilities, in 1972. We depend on donations from all sorts of foundations and individuals and businesses throughout our community to help fund these programs, and this is our biggest fundraiser of the year.
Well, congratulations. You've reached the end of one of our videos. Now we've got more. Maybe you could click on one of these ones here and I can get out of the shop one of these days.